my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new. Happy New Year to each and every single one of you. I hope you all had a fabulous New Year, Christmas celebrations, and I hope you all had a wonderful 2023, and I hope you all have a wonderful 2024. I cannot believe that we are filming yet another reading wrap up. I did one of these last year and I can't believe that it's already been a year. This is absolutely crazy. So as you guys can tell, I'm going to be filming my 2023 yearly reading wrap up of every single book that I read throughout the year, alongside all of my ratings as well. I filmed a favourites of 2023, which I will link in the description box down below so you can go check it out. I spoke about my 5-star all-time favourite read of the year, so if you want to have a bit more of an in-depth insight into what those books are, then definitely go check that video out. If you are new, then don't forget to click the subscribe button down below, and don't forget to give the video a big old thumbs up if you love it. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let's just jump straight into the video. So we're going to begin by going through my statistics of the year according to Goodreads. Now I use Goodreads. You can go follow me over there. I will have it's just my name, but I will link it in the description box down below so you can go check it out. So overall, I read 32 books. This surpassed my reading goal of 30. I had initially put my reading goal at 35 books. However, throughout the year, I ended up having a couple of months where I didn't pick up a single book, and I just felt like reading 35 books was super inaccurate to kind of what was going on in my life at the time. I was working, I was also at uni, and I just genuinely didn't have the time to read, and I was in a couple of reading slumps actually as well. So for that, I did then reduce it to 30 books, and I ended up reading 32. My goal this year, however, is 35, so I'm hoping I can get there. I read 10,264 pages. My shortest book was Tintin and the Picross with 62 pages, and my longest book was 645 pages, and that being Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home. My average book length was 320 pages, which is usually kind of the average book size that I typically pick up. My most shelved book, with 3,949,944 people having shelved this book on their Goodreads, is ACOTAR, A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J Maas. And my least shelved was The Real Urge, which is an autobiography, with only 160 people having shelved that book. My average rating for 2023 was 4.1 stars. And my highest rated on Goodreads was Magnolia Park's, being 4.33 on average. So we are going to dive right into the books that I read. Okay, so we kickstarted January with, I believe, yes, we kickstarted January last year, which was literally a year ago, with Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. As you guys know, this is my all-time favourite book. I love it. I do actually do a reread of this every single year. I have not done my reread yet. I do typically do it over the sort of Christmas period, but I was reading another book. But I rated this one 5 stars. There's no surprise. I love this book. If you are getting into any Agatha Christie's, this is one of the books that I highly recommend. We are going to sort of fly through these, because if not, we're going to be here for a long time. So I did actually take part in the Agatha Christie challenge of 2023. Now, if you're unaware, every year Agatha Christie House do a challenge where you can take part, and they'll nominate a book for you to read every month, and there'll be like a certain theme to it, etc, etc. And for the January theme, it was Sad Cypress by Agatha Christie. I obviously had a very Agatha Christie like heavy month as such. This, I originally rated it 4 stars, but I think I'm gonna rate it 3 now, purely because the story hasn't actually stuck in my head whatsoever. I did enjoy it, and if I were to read it again I'd probably remember what happened, but it's not one of those books that's kind of really stuck in my head and I don't regularly think about it. So for that I will be rating it 3 stars. Like, my final rating will be 3 stars. It was still quite like a fast-paced book. It was definitely sort of written in a different format, which was quite nice compared to some of her other stories. We sort of had like a past and present timeline running throughout this, which was quite cool. I then read Caraval, which was a 5-star read for me. I spoke about this in my favourites video, which I just loved. It was so good. I love this world, the characters, the subplot of romance, the action, the energy that just went throughout this book, the magic, of course. It was just incredible. I loved every single second of it. I think I read this in about 2 days, which is very fast for me. I was super ill at the beginning of last year and I quite literally just sat and read this book and I loved it. It was so, so good. If you're umming and ahhing about getting into the Caraval world, I would 100% recommend it. It is brilliant. We then had Legendary, which unfortunately I didn't enjoy as much as the first book, which I have a feeling I know why. I think it's because we see another POV. We follow another POV in this book, and I don't think I liked that character as much as I did in Caraval, or who we follow in Caraval. I just think it kind of ruined it for me. There was some sort of elements in here that I just didn't really like. I didn't think there was a lot of action or kind of magic or energy like Caraval had. It was very different. It was set on a different island this time round, and yeah, it just didn't speak to me as much as Caraval did. Then I read this and it actually then put me in a month-long book slump, which is very, very long in my eyes. I rated it 3 stars because yes, I did like it. Like, I didn't hate it to the point I wouldn't reread it again. I just didn't sort of grasp it as well as I did with Caraval, and I think purely because of the switch of POVs that we had. So I ended up reading 4 books in January, and then February I read 0 books because of the sort of month-long book slump that I was in, and it took me probably about 5 weeks just to read this book. I finished this book on the 19th of March, which obviously is a very long time because I'm pretty sure I was reading this all throughout February as well. And that is The Couple at Number 9 by Claire Douglas. This was actually really, really good. I really enjoyed it. There was such a good twist at the end that was super unexpected, and usually with thrillers and mysteries, because I've read quite a few, I tend to guess the ending, and when I've sort of guessed it right, it kind of ruins it. So I didn't actually guess at all what was going to happen in this book, which I was thoroughly impressed with. I have heard, generally speaking, that Claire Douglas is actually a really, really good writer. This is my first Claire Douglas book that I've ever read, but I will definitely be reading more of her work. I think it is incredible. It's so good. She's got a really, really great kind of imaginative mind. I rated this one 4 stars. It still wasn't quite the 5-star read for me, however it was still up there with a really, really good book. Also in March I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This wasn't great. I didn't really enjoy it as much as I kind of thought I would. I read The Paris Apartment the year before that and I really enjoyed that one. That was also my first Lucy Foley book, whereas this one just didn't kind of hit the spot for me. It was kind of a bit flat. I think it sort of went on longer than it should have. This is genuinely just my personal opinion. I like a really fast-paced, snappy mystery book. Overall, I did like the setting. It was sort of set on a remote island. It was a wedding, so it was a super atmospheric, kind of eerie read. Super, super good for this time of year and like Halloween and that. But I just didn't love it as much as I loved The Paris Apartment. I do also have The Hunting Party yet to read from Lucy Foley, so I will get round to that. And she's got a couple of other books, I think. But I ended up rating this one 3 stars just because I didn't love it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. It kind of just sat in the middle for me. I then didn't read any books in April. purely because I think the guest list actually gave me a huge reading slump, which is really unfortunate. I love, like, I hate being in a reading slump. It's one of those things that I try and avoid at all costs. Obviously it can be sometimes inevitable, but I do try and avoid them. However, I then went into reading 9 Liars by Maureen Johnson. I finished this one on the 14th of May, so I went through pretty much all of March, because I think I finished the guest list sort of like mid-March, all through April without reading, and then this one, which took me quite a while to get through, I think. This is the 5th book in the kind of truly devious world. This is a standalone, however I would recommend reading all the other books before that because you follow the same characters. This follows Stevie, who going to London for her senior year, I think, or something along those lines. I rated this one 4 stars. This wasn't my favourite because it ended on a really big cliffhanger that I felt like, oh my god, I just didn't quite know what to do with myself, and I still don't know if we're going to be getting another one. I think we are. It just didn't grasp me as much as the Truly Devious one did. This was still good, but it wasn't great, if that makes sense. So I did rate it 4 stars. It's still a very good rating. However, it definitely isn't my favourite, but I did still love it. And it did get me out of my reading slump to go into June with reading The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This was a whirlwind of kind of emotions. I think I rated it, what did I rate it? I rated it 3 stars. I would probably rate it kind of like a 3.5, 3.75. I wouldn't quite reach the 4-star mark personally, although I have been thinking about it quite a lot. So I feel like a 4-star could be quite deserved for this book. This does have sort of paranormal kind of tendencies in this book, which isn't typically something I would enjoy or pick up. I don't really like reading about ghosts or anything sort of paranormal. It's not really my kind of cup of tea as such. However, the way this was written is so freaking good. It was really cleverly written. I would actually urge a lot of people to read Riley Sager. If you are new to thrillers, there's a way that Sager kind of writes thrillers that I actually do really like. They are very psychological, which is what I think is what I love about them. I'm yet to read Survive the Night, which is another one of his books, like a recent one I think that's come out that I'm gonna get on Kindle. Overall, I did really like it. I didn't love it, but I think that's genuinely just because of the kind of type of thriller it was. If it had been maybe something else, I really liked the sort of general kind of story behind it. I thought that was really good. July became a really good reading month for me. I started the month off by reading Shattered Me by Tara Maffei. I think that's how you pronounce her name. This is a YA dystopian world, basically, and I actually really like this world. I didn't think I'd like it because I'm not a huge sort of dystopian fan. And dystopian to me, like, I never really loved The Hunger Games, like, shoot me, but I really didn't. It wasn't my favourite. Like, when I think The Hunger Games sort of came about, like the movies and stuff came about when I was about 12, 13, 14 years old, and that was literally all anybody could talk about at school was The Hunger Games. And I remember going to the cinema to watch the movies and stuff, but I didn't love them. Like, I would never really kind of sit there and like reread them or rewatch. I might reread them, but I would never like rewatch the movies as such. But this is really different. This is really cool. I rated this 4 stars, I think. What did I rate this? Yeah, I rated it 4 stars. I really thoroughly actually really enjoyed it. I like it. It's there's a subplot of romance in it as well. And yeah, it's genuinely just a really good book. I also started this book on Kindle and then actually finished reading the physical copy, and I read it really quickly. And then following on from that, I did have a book in between, but I'm just going to quickly speak about Unravel Me. These books were mentioned in my July and August reading wrap up. This book was a fat, like, I haven't even rated the book. I didn't enjoy this one at all. I think there was like 400 pages worth of kind of waffle in this book. I think this is a lot more kind of, there was a lot more sort of world building, not a lot of action, not a lot of like, more like plot and no character development as such. And I just didn't really enjoy it. Like, I finished it because I want to read the rest of the series, but I really didn't enjoy it. And I think that's kind of like the given of the whole series, is that people don't particularly like that one as much. And I haven't even rated it, so I'm still not sure what to rate it, to be honest. Probably like a 2-star. But you know, I did read a book in between that, and that was Lovely War by Julie Berry. This was featured in my favourites book video. I loved this book. This was a 5-star read for me. I loved it. It was excellent. I could rave and rant about this book all day, every day. It was beautiful. There's definitely going to be a reread of this book happening because I just loved it so much. I think the storytelling was beautiful, the characters are beautiful, the plot was beautiful, everything about this book was just beautiful, and I loved the twist with the Greek kind of mythology sort of mixed into World War I history, which I just loved. I then read You'll Be the Death of Me by Karen M. McManus. I read this in my, I want to say I read this in a July reading vlog, I think. I ended up rating this 3 stars, I believe. Yeah, this is a 3-star. It was good, it was fun. I think at that time I was going to read the 3rd book in the Chassamy series, so I just wanted sort of like a palette cleanser in between, and I decided to pick this one up. This was the first Karen M. McManus book I read. Didn't love it. It was good. It was sort of entertaining for the time being. I read this really, really quickly, which is what I quite liked, and I liked the different POVs, which was, I like a book with different POVs. I've discovered that. But yeah, I have also got One of Us is Lying, which is on my TBR for the next year or so. I'm gonna see, because apparently One of Us is Lying is really, really good, but I don't know. I then also read my first proper Kindle book, which was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Rated it 4 stars. I loved it. It was really, really good. It wasn't as great as I feel like everybody had sort of made it out to be, but overall Frida McFadden is a brilliant writer. Like, she's got such a clever mind when it comes to mystery and thrillers. The Housemaid was such a big twist that I was really not expecting. I loved it. It was great. Definitely a 4-star. Definitely worth a read. I'm trying to read all of Frida McFadden's books. I don't have any physical copies of her books. I plan on reading all of them on Kindle because they're all on, I believe they're all on Kindle Unlimited. It was a very, very clever twist at the end. I also read a book called Sally Heathcote. This follows the sort of suffragette movement, and it was like a graphic novel, which was really cool. My auntie actually had it, and she lent it to me over the summer when we were over there, and therefore I read it, and that was my first read of August. I rated it, I didn't even rate it. I'd probably rate it like a 4-star. It was super informative, and it was quite, there was like a different sort of twist to it. We sort of followed Sally Heathcote, who was, you know, part of the suffragette movement. It was nice to kind of see it through a graphic novel point of view. I am super intrigued about the suffragettes. I love learning about the suffragettes. I just felt like it was a really good book to read, so if you are interested in that, I would thoroughly recommend it. It's very, very good. I haven't rated it, but I'd probably rate it a 4 or 5 star. Next up, we have A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J Maas. This, once again, I haven't rated. Oh my god. I don't actually really know what I want to rate it, if I am being completely honest. There's a part of me that feels pressured to rate it purely because of how highly anticipated this book is, and as you saw in my kind of statistics, this is the most shelved book on my Goodreads, and obviously everybody seems to love this series so much. I liked it. It was a good story. I didn't love it. I think that was because the fantasy genre to me is still very new, and there's a lot of world building that goes on in this, and I just felt confused for a lot of the time. I'm not sure if that's like a normal feeling. I honestly just felt confused. I don't really even know how it ended. I feel like I need to reread it in order to understand it again. I went on a bit of a different path. I actually ended up reading lots of Tintins. I really got back into my Tintin world this year, which I love. So the first one I read was Tintin in Tibet, which I haven't got a physical copy of. I then read Tintin and the Picaros, which, if you guys are completely unaware, they're basically just graphic novels, but I've been brought up on Tintin. My dad is a huge Tintin fan, my auntie is a huge Tintin fan. Tintin has basically consumed my family for the last like 40 years, so I only feel like it's right that I sort of get onto the trend and follow my family in their footsteps and read Tintin. I do love Tintin. I love, like, Tintin is like my kind of, if I don't know what to read and I want a quick read in between books, Tintin is my one to go to. So Tintin in the Picaros, I read Tintin in Tibet, Tintin in the Picaros. I then ended up reading, this is sort of like in between, the real Hergé, who is the creator of Tintin, and his autobiography, well, it's his sort of like real life basically. And I loved it. They didn't rate it because it was an autobiography, and I think I mentioned in my favourites video when I was talking about Beyond the Wand, I don't typically rate autobiographies. This was very, very good. So I read that, and then I went back to reading another Tintin, which is The Blue Lotus, which I don't have on me either. I read a book that changed my life, which was Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This was 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, like 10 stars even. I will be doing a whole dedicated video to the Magnolia Parks universe, purely because I feel like I need to talk about the series as a whole and just kind of go into detail about it. This book seriously changed my life. I loved it. I loved every single second of it. It made me sob. It made me laugh. It made me angry. I loved it. 5 freaking stars. And then I read 2 more Tintins, which were Destination Moon and Explorers on the Moon. These follow each other. Destination Moon's first, and then we've got Explorers on the Moon. I then read Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. This, once again, was an absolute whirlwind of emotions and trauma and everything you can imagine combined into these books. I loved it. I'm very excited to read the last Daisy Hates. I then thought a thriller would be helpful. Also, Daisy Hates was 5 stars. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. I then read 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. This book had been on my shelf for quite a while, so I was like, I'm gonna pick it up. This was 4 stars. I really loved it. As you guys know, Holly Jackson is one of my favourite authors. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is one of my favourite series, so it was only right that I read 5 Survive. I then read The Calculus Affair. Then we go on to The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. This was a, what did I rate this? 4 star. I actually ended up rating it 4. I think initially I rated it 3 stars, but I think with the reaction that I had to this book and me ordering the second book immediately after finishing it, I rated it 4 stars. It was so good. It was a super gripping, super fast paced. Loved it. Once again, it was one of those books that I read super quickly. Yeah, I loved it. It was great. And then I actually did a reread of my favourite book, which is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I got the special edition, Waterstones edition of it, which I'm super excited to say that the second and the third book in the series are going to be developed into this sort of cover as well, so I'm very excited for that because I love this book so much. I then read Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton. I mentioned this in my favourites video. This was a 5 star. It's the only autobiography I've ever rated, purely because of how incredibly written this book was and the emotion and the kind of tale behind it. It was genuinely incredible. I loved it. I then actually read Ward D, Freedom McFadden. I completely forgot I read this book actually, so overall I read 3 Kindle books over last year. I rated it 3 stars. It was good. It wasn't great. I personally didn't like the whole kind of hospital-y vibe of it, but it was nonetheless still like a good book to read in between books, if that makes sense. Like if you're in between a series, it's a good book to read. I then read If We Were Villains by ML Rio. This was a top 5-star read for me. This was incredible. It was beautifully written. The story is incredible. It's a literary thriller. It's so freaking good. I really want ML Rio to write more books or follow a series or something, because this was amazing. I loved it. I then read Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home. I finished this literally within days of the year sort of finishing. Holy moly, did I sob at this book. This book also gave me a severe book hangover. It was, oh my god, I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am to read the sort of next book in the series, because oh my god, amazing. And to finish the year off, I managed to squeeze in one more book, and that is The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden, which is the second book in the Housemaid series. I rated it 3 stars. I didn't love it as much as the first book. I didn't think it was quite as kind of like the twist, I didn't think was quite as good. It was a bit plain Jane, but overall it was still like an entertaining read. I read it on Kindle, so I read it really quickly. So with all of that, those are all the books that I read in 2023. I'm actually overall really chuffed with the kind of collection of books that I read, but I hope that 2024 will be bigger and stronger than ever, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful year. And also don't forget that reading is always a pleasure, and don't ever feel like it has to be a chore, and don't ever compare your reading standards to other people's. If you've got what you think is a small goal compared to other people's, then you do you. I feel like we need to stop comparing ourselves to other people. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give the video a big old thumbs up, subscribe down below, and don't forget to turn on the little post notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video. And with that said, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.